Well, guys, we got the election still well on its way, but getting closer and closer each day. Damn, those were some fire-ass bars. And with all that, sort of in mind, I think it's important for us to talk about how Donald Trump, the indisputable and inevitable candidate running up against Biden, our guy, what his chances are and how they're looking coming into this election. Now, obviously, like I said before, we all support Biden, but despite that, it doesn't mean we can't look at Biden's shortcomings and recognize where he's at a disadvantage and where Trump, the guy we don't like, is at an advantage. And one of the points that Donald Trump is at an advantage with over Biden, unfortunately, is time. Believe it or not, unless it's a very quick and quippy, memey, memorable gotcha, things that are bad about a person in politics don't tend to last that long. On one hand, you've got gotchas like Hillary's emails or Benghazi, that even though 99% of the people who repeat those words don't even know what that scandal references or what it's about, it's so snappy and memorable. I don't think Hillary Clinton will never not hear about Benghazi or her emails, right? But then you've got stuff like with Trump, where Trump's gone through a million big scandals. A million, literally a million. A small loan of a million big scandals. And despite that, can you even name 5? Can you name 10? I actually need a minute to think and remember a few, because there's so many, I've actually forgotten most of them. I can only remember like the last 3 or 4, because dedicating any more brain power to more than that is dedicating too much brain power to Donald Trump. So, with that in mind, I think it's important for us to talk about the fact that Donald Trump, despite how horrible of a president he was, people seem to just not remember how bad he was. In comparison, though, Biden, who's currently president and doing a fantastic job, might I add, on social, economic, and like, not as much foreign policy issues, but, I mean, he's doing better than any other president before, so, I mean, I can't really attack him on the foreign policy front outside of I disagree with supporting Israel as harsh, or as, sort of ardently as he does. But besides that, I mean, he's done a pretty fantastic job. And so it's surprising that Biden has lower approval ratings than Trump. And not only that, but that many of the average Americans that you would just question or poll on the street believe that their lives were better under Trump than they were under Biden, and say that that is going to impact who they vote for in 2024, in this coming election in November. This is very bad. Donald Trump was a monster. His presidency was god-awful. His policy economically was god-awful. I mean, do you remember the, whole China steel tariffs thing and how every economist, in America had to come out and say, holy fuck, this is really bad. This is the dumbest idea ever. This does not pass the, savings on to America and, make China pay more for anything. It's the other way around. It really was just, he was awful. And then there was COVID, where we had, I think at one point we literally had a 9/11's worth of Americans dying per day, right? Wasn't there a point where we started measuring the death toll of Americans to COVID per day in 9/11's? Yeah. Yeah, that was literally months of Trump's presidency, was we were losing a 9/11's worth of Americans a day to COVID. That's how we measured it. Mostly Trump supporters, lol? I don't know, though. I don't know. Because Trump supporters, what you have to understand is the type of people who are on the anti-vax train, especially now, are the types of people who got COVID once or twice, and for them, it was nothing but a light flu. They thought, oh, this is all bullshit, it's all made up, and then when they get sick with COVID, they go out on the town, and they spread it to all the other people who aren't as lucky as them, and end up being, in some cases, their life is over once they get long COVID, you know? And so, believe it or not, the most ardent anti-vaxxers and anti-maskers, etc., are the people who have gotten so lucky, COVID doesn't really hurt them that bad. And so if they ever do get that karma COVID infection, it's just going to be as simple as a light cold for them. I got COVID. I never got sick. I never get sick. It was the worst flu I've ever had. I was lucky. Trump supporters base have short-sighted memory, and as a result, they just blame many of Trump's own failures on Biden. That wouldn't be as much of a problem if it weren't potent enough to affect the mainstream. No, you can't 34. I think you guys, or 35. I think you guys are kind of mixing up what I'm saying here. This isn't about Trump's bad decisions and policies carrying on to Biden, because Biden has fixed that. Like, the economy is in an era of growth. Wages are growing more than, like, since the 1960s, guys. Like, Bidenomics, whatever you want to call it, are really fucking good, okay? And that's not even talking about, like, yesterday we covered that bill that he passed, expanding Title IX, where it's going to help get more justice for students that have been victims of sexual assault or anything along those lines, harassment, etc., and also grant protections for discrimination, against discrimination for trans students, federally. Federal protection, as in if a school decides to enforce anti-trans policies, federal charges can come down from Washington to state government officials trying to enforce this. This title would overrule these red states trying to crack down on trans rights and drop federal charges on the people responsible for cracking down on these trans rights. Biden is doing a good fucking job. It's not about people not understanding that the bad things happening under Biden are because of Trump or because of Republican policy, going back even further than Trump, to be fair. It's the fact that people don't remember the bad of a few years ago. They remember the bad of today and maybe the bad of last year, but a lot of people don't remember how fucked shit was 5 years ago. They miss 5 years ago when all of the problems they were facing that at the time looked really rough are now just in hindsight. And so a lot of people have a recency bias. That's what it's called, a recency bias. Now, we usually hear this in reference to, like, movies and TV shows. Every new episode of this TV show or every new movie from this franchise is the best one. And you believe that, like, for the first, like, week after it comes out. But then with a little time, the hype wears away and you're able to more objectively gauge your preferences. I think the opposite happens, in a way, in politics with recency bias, where people feel as though whoever is currently president is doing a bad job. This doesn't mean we don't get reelected, like, people 2 terms in a row, obviously, but it does seem like, has there ever been a president more popular on his second term than on his first? Maybe in very rare circumstances, like, first term, gets reelected, and then shortly after a war starts, like a popular war in the start, and like the approval ratings go up. Maybe there's like a couple of really good presidents that did some big reforms and stuff that had very high approval rating. But man, I don't know. I feel like it's just sort of the trend that people, like, every president loses approval with time, no matter how well they do or how badly they do. Donald Trump's might actually be the one exception with that. Didn't his approval ratings actually go up a fair amount after he got elected and started making bad policy decisions? Let me check. Trump approval rating chart 2016 through 2024. Oh, no, well, this is job approval. So yeah, okay. So in 2017, it was at 45, dropped down to the low 30, or down to 35 in 2018, back up to 45 in mid-2018, down to 38 in 2019, 46 midway through 2019, beginning of 2020, so as we're getting into COVID, it goes up to 49 and peaks at 49 twice during COVID. drops a bit down to 39 during COVID and plateaus for a while before spiking back up to 46 and then going down like after he gets unelected. So Donald Trump finished his presidency 1 point higher in approval than he did when he started. There was a lot of up and down in between then and there, and his approval dropped since. But people liked Donald Trump's job, like doing his job at president, more at the end of his presidency than at the start. Jan 6th must have hurt him. Yeah, it looks like Jan 6th did hurt him a fair amount. It dropped him down to 34. But outside of that, people did not mind how he handled COVID. Like, how bad of a president Trump was did not reflect in his approval ratings at all. And what shows very clearly here, as we're about to get into, is how good of a president Biden is does not show in his approval ratings at all either. You cannot ever rely on the idea that times will be good enough under a good president that will mean people will be like, oh, I want more of this. Let's reelect this guy. That will never happen. That is not how Americans think. If times are good, they don't think about the things that are good. They refocus on new bad things, new problems they have, and find a way to justify it being the fault of anyone but themselves. And the best scapegoat for anything is the government or the president, whoever's in charge right now of the country. And that means that everybody's always going to have a pretty pessimistic way of looking at things, the average American voter especially. And under Biden, who are they going to blame for any problems they have with anything other than Biden? Did you just say Biden is a good president? Yeah, would you like to come on stream and try to debate against that point? Are you a lefty? I have a feeling you could not name like 3 Biden policies if you disagree with this and you claim to be left-wing. Anyway, here we have memory is on the ballot this year as Trump gets an amnesia advantage. That's what they're calling it. The amnesia advantage. It seems that Donald Trump has sort of the advantage over Biden in the sense that people just don't remember how bad he was. And even if they did, if we look at his approval ratings back then, they weren't really affected that much by how bad of a job he did. I'm not left by today's standards. Oh, you're a conservative? Okay, well, you can wait until after the segment then.
And Susan, your latest piece for The New Yorker is titled Donald Trump's Amnesia Advantage Gets at What You Were Just Talking About. Susan writes in part, the American presidency is the ultimate easy target, whether high gas prices due to the Russian invasion of Ukraine or post-pandemic inflation at the grocery store. Biden absorbed the outrage, while the mitigating steps taken by his administration have not redounded to his credit. Susan continues, the incumbency bind is a real problem for Biden in 2024. So, too, is the political amnesia powering the increasingly absurd arguments from Trump and his enablers about how he'd better handle everything from Israel and Ukraine to the border.
Reminder, by the way, Trump's way of handling the Ukraine stuff is to stop giving anything to Ukraine, which unfortunately is becoming an increasingly more popular policy with American voters. Unfortunately, support for Ukraine, while it is pretty generally accepted, the amount of propaganda claiming that trillions of tax dollars are being funneled into Ukraine, despite the fact that the resources that we've sent to Ukraine, like draining our unused stocks of weaponry and vehicles and so on and so forth, and ammunition, those were never being used. So once we toss them over to Ukraine to be used in a fight against an enemy adversarial country, which we also benefit from Ukraine fighting them. I think we could agree on that, right? Like Ukraine fighting Russia right now, probably better than Russia fighting us if that was a thing to happen, you know? We're not too friendly with them. Ukraine we're much more friendly with. Ukraine's also I would argue, a more useful country to the world economy to not let get completely fucked up by Ukraine, or not by Ukraine, by Russia. They're kind of, destroying the number 2 or 3 grain exporter in the world. I'm pretty sure if Ukraine's land continues to get fucked, we will see prices on grain products continue to rise, which is, you notice that, right? Ever since the invasion of Ukraine, grain products went up in price. Bread got more expensive. Pie crust got more expensive. Burgers got more expensive because buns, literally anything with grain in it, got a bit more expensive, noticeably more expensive at least, since the invasion of Ukraine. Ukraine's like the number 2 or 3 world grain exporter, and there's a lot more they do than just grain too. So like we're talking about a lot of very broad reasons here why we don't want Ukraine to fall, and if we're just talking from the selfish American perspective too, the money and resources we have sent over to Ukraine, for as much as that is, and you can point to some big number or whatever, economists and like data has shown the amount of jobs that have been created for Americans in America restocking what we've sent to Ukraine, because most of what we sent isn't raw money. It's stuff that already existed that was just sitting in like a fucking Ukraine's number 2 behind the U.S. Cool, sitting behind like a silo somewhere, like in some facility out in the desert or whatever. That has to be replenished. And the replenishment of that is done by Americans working American jobs. And it has been shown the amount of money created in jobs for Americans has massively out, dwarfs that of the money we're sending to Ukraine. So yes, we are sending a lot of money to Ukraine. But the way that we're doing it not only helps Ukraine, which is a good thing for a variety of reasons. Russia is not a friend of ours, nor is it a good thing if Ukraine continues to get fucked up and fall to Russia. And on top of that, the way that we're doing it is in such a way that is creating so many more jobs for Americans that we are seeing an economic replenishment of that money and a profit being made. That is why we keep seeing economic and wage growth across the board. Record-breaking, in fact, is because even if you can point to some policy Biden passed or a thing Biden did that sent a bunch of money away or spent a bunch of money, I can point to you to show you where that action resulted in even more money being made for Americans. And it being a valuable, extremely smart investment. You know, all these people that love Trump, they talk about how much he knows his investments and everything, yet they see an investment, like they see a little money go away in the short term for more money in the long term. They see an investment happen, and they lose their fucking minds, like they've never seen it happen in their lives.
Forgetting Trump's own memory lapses and those of the broader electorate is one of the former president's political superpowers. You could add to that list, and I know you write about this too, Susan, January 6th, the rewriting of history around that, what he did around the 2020 election. Donald Trump.
Even if you don't like Donald Trump, or you don't have much of a positive opinion on him, Donald Trump repeats his slogans and catchphrases so frequently that normies fall for that shit, just because it becomes such a commonly recited slogan. So Donald Trump calling the January 6th rioters political prisoners, the fact that it's been years already, when you ask the average American what they think of the January 6th protesters or rioters and if they should be imprisoned, a lot of them just respond, it's been 3 years. Why not just let them go? Or it's been 4 years. Why not just let them go? Why are we still holding them? It's been 4 years. What's the point? Why not just, it just seems kind of pointless, you know? It just feels like it's some kind of political stunt. The average median voters say that about the January 6th rioters and insurrectionists. The Trump amnesia is very powerful. Enough time has passed that even people who, when January 6th happened, cared about it and saw it as a problem, they just think, give him a slap on the wrist and let him go now. Who cares? It's been a while. They haven't done anything wrong anymore. You know, they've been good since then. You know? There was no coup.
Still sort of like he did in 2016, wants to be the white knight riding into...
My mom doesn't necessarily support Trump, but she thinks the elections were rigged. Yeah, PP Girl 420. There are also just a lot of people who are just batshit retarded. You know, there's really just no other way to put it than that. They don't have any... political values or prescriptions that they adhere to. They just have conspiratorial thinking, for lack of better phrasing. Like, they think everything's a conspiracy, everything's a lie, everything's being covered up from them, and they have to solve some puzzle or not trust authority. And so those people will oftentimes just get brain rotted politically. Absolutely, PP girl. A lot of like Facebook parents, you know, like now it's Twitter. Twitter is basically the new Facebook. Like, dude, do you want to see the kind of shit that trends on Twitter these days? Like, holy fucking shit. This is the guy who posted the meme about how he cries when his favorite YouTubers make a joke that's blaspheming or anti-Christianity. If you remember, the tired meme clown guy. It's an edit of a Stone Toss comic where it's the child rape competition. I love that in the world of internet politics, culture war shit, simply drawing this image is not something that makes you, like, in an unironic manner, is not something that makes you the biggest lolcow in all of existence that has ever lived. Then you've got the guy in the gay shirt flag, the gay flag shirt, saying, "You got this, champ. Nobody rapes kids like us F-slurs." And then the gay guy is like, "Whoa!" And then it's the happy merchant Jewish, like drawing thing that anti-Semites use. Yeah. I wonder if that guy's a Nazi. If you called this guy a Nazi, you would have about 1 million people in your replies calling you Jewish and saying that not everyone that disagrees with you is a Nazi.
To save a country in decline, forgetting the fact that he was right there in the middle of it for 4 years, adding to it.
Yeah, I'm pretty blown away. When you look at some of these numbers, it is just extraordinary. It's as if the country, a large part of the country, has lost its collective mind, really. I mean, you know, you see Donald Trump going up in polls on every...
She's absolutely correct. Not a single day goes by anymore where I don't think of that meme, where it's the ape, and it's like, we taught a chimpanzee to understand the mind of the average median political voter or American voter, and it hung itself. I never don't think of that meme. It lives in my head rent-free. I think of it every day. This meme explains everything about this entire phenomenon. Let me see if I can find it. God, I love this meme. It literally lives so rent-free in my head. We taught this chimpanzee to understand the American political system, and he hanged himself. The meme edit is one where it's the average American voter, but yeah. It's really, really funny. I love that meme. Lives rent-free in my head.
Sort of criteria. For example, leadership qualities. You know, is he capable of managing the country well in a crisis? It's literally like, did all of America just sleep through 2020? Did they forget this? And what I'm struck by is that it's across the board. We're talking about Israel right now. And increasingly, I hear, as I'm sure you do, from many people, especially many young people who are not even fans of Donald Trump, well, what really is the difference between the two parties? I mean, what is the difference between Joe Biden and Donald Trump? And I think, how is it even possible that this is the conversation?
Even if Biden and Donald Trump were exactly the same on the foreign policy position of Israel, the idea that that would preclude any, like, discussion about how much better Biden is domestically is ridiculous. Like absolutely. What I need you guys to understand are that the young lefties saying they won't vote Biden, they're just stupid. Like, I need you guys to recognize this. Nobody... The people who are saying they're not going to vote Biden are literally types of people on Twitter that say, my mode of political efficacy, voting is bad. Nothing beats my mode of political efficacy, which is firebombing a Walmart. And they proceed to not firebomb a Walmart. Instead, they sit home and continue to post on Twitter about how they're not going to vote. Instead, they're going to go do a revolution and firebomb a Walmart. And so whenever you see one of these posts, I am so happy to see, I've started to see the trend where all the replies on a post like that, advocating for people not to vote and instead to advocate for revolution, all the replies are, I'm sorry, what's the status of your local Walmart? Walmart photos? What's the status of your local Walmart? How's your local Walmart doing? Walmart? Question mark? Like, they just, all the replies are that. It was genuinely the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I think it was his Exizi tweet everyone was replying to, asking him, what is the status of your local Walmart if you're not going to be voting? If you don't want people to vote and you advocate so much for revolution. It's really just the best way to reply to these people. Okay, what's the status of your local Walmart?
Conversation we're having in 2024. It's a remarkable thing, but I think you have to look at memory itself as on the ballot in our elections this fall.
Caddy, it is extraordinary, this phenomenon of Trump amnesia. It's been
changes in presidential character ratings. Donald Trump. So people believe that Donald Trump managed effectively at a rate of 48% in 2020. With a 1-point increase today. They think he's a point more likable today, or like a point more. People think he's more likable. A point more think he's got good judgment. A point more think he's a decisive leader. Minus 3 points on he cares about my needs. It's so weird how the same people who answered yes to all these questions, saying that they think like Trump is good in all these ways, don't think that Trump cares about their needs. Like, some percentage of those people answered, yes, he's good on these, but no on this somehow. And I don't know. Honest and trustworthy, -5. It's so weird that Donald Trump can be seen as an effective manager, likable, with good judgment and a decisive leader. And yet, even among the average voters, they still believe he doesn't care about their needs. And he's not honest and trustworthy. But they still think these things, despite believing these things aren't true. It's so bizarre how much compromise. Yeah, I heard this term once. I forget what conservative pundit said it, but they said, I grade Trump on a curve. You got to understand that they don't compare Trump to the almighty. They compare him to the alternative. But when it comes to a Democrat, I almost feel as though the Democrats, being seen as the party that's supposed to be the morally just and righteous party, kind of that's the stereotype kind of latched onto them, if there is any perceived hypocrisy that can be attacked at, then people treat any moral wrong they perceive in the Democrats so much more harshly than the Republicans, because the Republicans aren't about morals, and the Republicans aren't about being a goody two-shoes people helper. They're the ones who fix the economy and stop the woke takeover and keep these crazy, activists from going too far. They balance out the wokeness. That is what a lot of your average voters think. They think that wokeness is like one crazy end of the spectrum and that like crazy far-right stuff is the other end, and they've got to balance things out and not let any side be in power for too long. A lot of median voters think that the proper way to vote is to ensure that no single party, no matter what, holds the presidency for too long. So there's a lot of people that'll just vote Republican for no other reason than the last president was a Democrat. And it seems more fair to them for the next president to be a Republican. There are genuinely voters, a lot of them, maybe millions of voters, who think that way when they go into the ballot box. If you don't believe me, you haven't talked to enough people.
Written about, there's been some studies about it, and certainly just day-to-day conversations. People are like, oh, no, it wasn't that bad, or oh, this happened. It's like, no. And people don't remember. So my question to you is, what challenge does this pose us as journalists, in terms of reminding people, providing necessary context, fact-checking? Because when you do so, you're often accused by the...
I don't think it's so much a thing you need to... I don't think we need to be, like, reminding people of how bad Trump is, like, as a principle, like, constantly all the time. Like, oh, remember how bad Trump was? Hey, remember how bad Trump was? Because simply doing that all the time almost seems annoying and might even result in pushing people towards Trump so they can stop hearing about how bad Trump was and hear more about how bad Trump is. Just for excitement. Just for a change of pace, right? People literally vote like that. I hate to say it, but a lot of people vote like that. And so I almost feel like just having this conversation's the valuable thing. Talking about the fact that if you're falling for this, if you're part of the group of Americans who has fallen into the Trump amnesia and has forgotten what happened 4 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever, and you're just thinking that Trump and Biden are maybe the same, or perhaps Biden's even worse, or Trump has gotten better or wasn't as bad as you remember him being, I promise you it's not the case. And you're falling for what Trump is trying to do. He is trying to make you forget how bad he was, so you think, you know what? Let's get Trump back in the office. Yeah, let's see how that goes. You guys remember how that went, right? COVID didn't happen under Biden. It happened under Trump. COVID would be gone right now if it happened under Biden, because as much as people would have hated it, we would have probably had enforced lockdowns through much of the country. And we would have been able to cut down on the amount of hospitalizations and deaths from COVID substantially. Maybe not wiping it out as we should have. I don't know if it would have been possible. But America certainly, with Trump in charge, ensured that we will never stop COVID. Not unless we find a cure for it. And that's not a thing. Like, we can't do that. Like, COVID's a virus. We don't know how to just make a thing that goes into your body and kills a virus. We might have that for like 1 or 2, but they're all different. And the variants are all different, so, like, it's basically not possible. Like, we're basically fucked, you know? Like, COVID's around forever now, and it'll keep mutating, so even if we do find a cure, we're fucked. It's like the common cold, exactly. If we find a cure for the common cold, it'll just evolve into a new one, especially if anti-vaxxers are around. Anti-vaxxers are the people that guarantee that these superbugs get to have a safe place to mutate and survive. So, like, that's what measles is having right now. It's why we're having measles in the country again for the first time in like 20 years, is because the anti-vaxxers are acting as like an island of safety where they cannot be touched by the medicine that kills them. And now the like non-vaxxers are acting as like a constant replenishment of these 25 years of these horrific diseases back into this country. I really do wonder if we'll see any motions to, like, act with criminal charges on anti-vaxxers, like people who knowingly don't get vaccinated for, like, and spread disease. Like, that's gotta be, like, we should probably be categorizing that as, like, attempted murder or assault. Like, if sneezing in someone's face in public is a form of battery or assault, which I think it is, like, just generally because of the risk, then knowingly walking around while sick with, like, COVID or something should honestly be, like, manslaughter charges. Yeah, because people can die from COVID. Yes. You know, depending on the location, I think the amount of old people and children you've been in contact with knowingly with COVID should be, like, an extra manslaughter charge, you know? So, like, every single one, like, near or attempted manslaughter, I don't know what the term would be legally, but yeah, just get them in prison for a really fucking long time, you know? I really do think anti-vaxxers are scum of the earth. I hope, like, I really want them to see jail cells.
The other side, in this case, Republicans, conservatives, in a bad faith way of being biased. Why are you talking about January 6th all the time? Why are you talking about this? Why are you doing this? You're just trying to sway people's opinions. So what's the right approach here?
It is really unfortunate, too, that the right has this sort of, like, they will do something horrible, and then if progressives criticize it, not just because it is something that the right is doing, but because it is horrible, their response is, you're just calling this out because of political disagreement. You're just mad about this because of political disagreement. No, we politically disagree, and that's why we're calling it out, okay? This behavior is what these politics stand for. The desire to win no matter what, so much so that you'll overturn an election with an attempted coup, that is a conservative right-wing GOP value, one they have been touting since Donald Trump first got elected, and this in the last election was coming up, that no matter what, Trump will be the next president, even if he doesn't win the election, is essentially what his fans were saying. They will make him be the next president no matter what. And then they failed. And now they're coping hard about it. And if you criticize them for any of that, if you even talk about any of that, their immediate copium response to try to get people not to pay attention to that is to say, why are you still talking about that? That was so long ago. Get over it already.
I wish.
I remember when I read, like, when Biden did his recent State of the Union address, half of the comments on, granted it was Twitter, but half of the comments were like, I stopped watching after he said January 6th in the first 3 sentences. Half of the comments said that. They stopped watching after Biden said January 6th. Like, median voters want the Democrats to drop January 6th. They see it as like a political strategy to try to take down Trump, not as an actual legal process being done to people who broke the law. They don't, that's all that the average median voter sees it as, a political stunt. That's how they saw the impeachment of Trump. The average median voter did not approve of the impeachment of Trump. Trump's approval ratings skyrocketed. In fact, one of the biggest jumps we saw in that chart I just showed was after his impeachment, his second impeachment trial, I think it was. Like, every time Trump got an impeachment trial or anything along those lines, it actually resulted in his approval ratings going up because they aren't seen as valid legal procedures. They're seen as a political attack. And when the government's attacking somebody, I mean, surely that must mean that person's good because the government's bad. Kind of fully, we're kind of going full circle back to the American brain rot of there must always be a scapegoat for every problem, and it's almost always going to be who's currently in charge.
Wish I had the answer. I mean, I really do, because I think Donald Trump has always been one of the most tricky politicians, if we call him that, figures to cover. Right from 2015 when he came down the escalator and he got a huge amount of attention, a huge amount of free airtime, partly because he was new, he was newsworthy, right? He was a different kind of politician. He was someone running for the presidency who had never been elected before, who said extraordinary things that were right outside of the political mainstream. And then I think after he left office, part of the reason for the amnesia was that we'd gone through 4 years of government by chaos. I mean, that was the way Trump operated. It was, for all of us journalists who covered it every day, it was sort of exhausting. And I think for the country, there was that as well. I mean, poll after poll showed us that people were exhausted by the Trump presidency. Even people who were big supporters of Donald Trump found it very tiring and found the level of exhaustion high. So perhaps that's... I
mean, there's even those messages leaked, the Tucker Carlson texts where he says that he hates Trump and like hates having to like defend him on air and can't wait for him to not be president anymore. And then you've got the leaked videos of Alex Jones from a few years ago where he talks about regretting ever having met Trump because after he met Trump, the illusion was broken for him and he realized how truly stupid Trump is and that he's not playing 4D chess. He's just egotistical. Like that, those were Alex Jones's words. The on video in a documentary when he talked about it, that he thought, and he asked, that's not going to be included, right? At the end of the clip, it's fucking crazy. None of these people, even those that are like the biggest dick riders for Trump, actually like the guy. Hell, they're honestly exhausted by dealing with him and talking about him. But he is their guy. Him winning upsets the libs, and that's all that matters. Conservative politics, for a lot of the people who follow it, not those who purport for it, not the advocates for it, not the demagogues, the grifters who push it, the people who follow those grifters, for a lot of them, being a conservative is just about attention. It's just about having politics and beliefs and saying things that get a reaction. When you're a lefty, I mean, sure, I guess you could say trans rights and get like a pretty angry reaction on a lot of social media these days, but it's far more edgy and entertaining for a lot of people, especially younger men, to just go online and say some racist far-right shit or just to express far-right values and then to get people upset with that and to see their reaction, to get the negative attention. A lot of conservatives operate this way. A lot of people who follow that content only do so because it's entertaining to trigger people by talking about it and saying you believe in it. They like the reaction more than they really care about any of the beliefs.
Why people wanted to forget. We just, we didn't want to go back to thinking about all that tiredness and the stress of covering that time. And I think today we're facing, look, MSNBC and NBC have just gone through this own version of this questioning with the hiring and then the firing of Ronna McDaniel. How do we give voice to the dissatisfaction that people who support Donald Trump feel in a legitimate, respectful way, whilst also calling out lies around something like an election that was not stolen. And
it's really rough too that no matter how dirty the Republicans play, it seems like the Democratic and like general left-leaning or center left-leaning establishment, MSNBC is a good example, are still even willing to give Trump supporters in the right like the time of day. Like if a Trump supporter wanted to come on and respectfully explain why like sending resources to Ukraine is something that, like, through American tax dollars, is something that they have a problem with, and to, like, have a genuinely honest debate about it, like, they would do that. They would hook that up, bring that person on, have that honest debate, be polite about it, let them, like, self-promote, et cetera, et cetera. That is what most, like, CNN, MSNBC, like, you could go down the list of these mainstream left-wing outlets. But Fox News, could you imagine a universe in which Fox News brings on any even relatively left-leaning person who's not trying to do some I left the left grift uncritically? Every attempt that Fox News has made to bring a left-leaning person on is a gotcha field. It's a minefield of gotchas. The best example has to be the anti-work subreddit interview. That was a massive fucking trap that anti-work Reddit mod fell for. They were looking to find the most socially awkward, never touched grass in their life Reddit mod motherfucker they could get to go on there and make leftism look fucking stupid, and they lucked out because someone was stupid enough from that subreddit to talk to the press. That was painful to watch, yeah. Anyone who hasn't seen the Fox News anti-work Reddit mod interview does not understand what I am thinking of when I criticize lefties. When I talk about the parts of the left that are, like, actually a toxic problem for this group as, like, a political movement and as a social space on the internet. Because as much as I hate to say it, the left functions both as a political movement and a social space that is fractured into many parts when it comes to the internet especially. Ugh.
People who went to prison after January the 6th because they committed crimes. So I think we just have to be clear in our own mind, and in every case, treat every single incident on its own merits. And is this truth? Is this not truth? In a world of disinformation, that becomes even harder, whilst not dismissing millions of people's grievances who have legitimate grievances and things they're unhappy about who may vote for Donald Trump.
Hey, everyone, MSNBC.
It really is scary to me that I don't know if the average American has the care, the know-how, or the, like, passion to even be suggestible to the truth. You know what I mean? Like, it's not even that I don't think the average American has the access to the truth necessary. They do. It's almost that I feel like the average American doesn't want to, like, accept things that are inconvenient truths, like the inconvenient truth that Biden's doing a good job. I know that's, like, kind of shit to accept, especially as a lefty, because when you imagine a good job, you're thinking, like, like Bernie or something be in power. But, like, if Bernie was president right now, we would probably still be in the exact place we are now. I don't really know if Bernie's policies would have been different than Biden's. I actually will not be honest, I will not be honest. I will not lie to you here. I will be completely honest with you. I don't know if Bernie's policies, the ones that are more radical he believes in, would have been able to get anywhere, considering, like, Biden is having to work around the majority conservative Supreme Court as it is, particularly with the student loan debt cancellation stuff. So, considering Biden's actual policy and his presidency have been more progressive than his platform was while running back in 2020 and 2019, I genuinely don't know if effectively, policy-wise, like materially, a Bernie presidency right now would be much different than our current Biden one. Does that seem disagreeable to you guys, or do you think that's roughly the case? Because I'm not saying Biden and Bernie have the same politics. It's not even close to true. What I'm saying is, insofar as what they could have gotten done and what they would have done, I think Bernie would have done exactly what Biden did, because Biden's policies have all been quite progressive, more so than expected, and they are, like, on the very edge of what he can get away with, particularly when it comes to, trying to get past in the Supreme Court. You got to remember, like, the president, the executive branch, that's the president, that's Biden, is still checked by the judicial branch, which is the Supreme Court. Those are two of the three branches of our government that check and balance each other. So even though Biden is the president, that doesn't give him unilateral power to do all the good things that you want. We still got demons on the Supreme Court that act as a balancing force to Biden's power as a progressive representative. You know what I mean? So even if Biden isn't doing everything you might want, you have to consider the circumstances too. And even if Bernie was in his place, how much more could he realistically do, even if he wants to do more than Biden does? I'm curious what you guys think about that, especially down below in the comments. Whether you're watching this live or when it goes up as a video, I'm curious to see, what you guys think. So comment down below. It also really does boost the channel a lot and help. Any form of engagement does, such as dropping a like as well, whether you're watching live or when this goes out on YouTube. Consider hitting the thumbs up button. Every single thumbs up goes a really long way and forces YouTube to push my content in the algorithm out to brand new people. So I really do appreciate it to every single one of you who does that. And of course, if you want to support me financially and you've got the money for it, consider donating, subscribing, or gifting a sub on my website, xanderhall.com/live, or supporting me through YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, Stream Elements, or Patreon. You can also buy merch through the Streamlabs link down below, or join my fan Discord, which is totally free. It's just a fun community where we do watch parties. I make all my announcements, my streams, and videos there as well, so you'll never miss them. And we do call-in streams through there as well. So it's just the place to go for the Xander Hall Community Hub. Hopefully I'll see you there.